Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Super Bowl Sunday. Got a special episode here of the Childhood Trauma Series, Episode 5, Sibling Warfare and Spirituality. We got two special guests that'll be joining us here shortly. We got Mike Hardy Sr. Out of Texas, born and raised in New York. He'll be telling his story on sibling warfare. And we also have a special guest pastor, Alex Furlow, out of Kingdom Life Ministries in Cypress, Texas. I can't wait to bring you this special episode on this wonderful Super Bowl Sunday. So you guys stay tuned.
Anatomy is on point.
See?
Yo, D, don't get him started, please. Don't do that. Don't get him started, man.
Awesome. Well, like I said, while we were getting prepared, like I said, I'll cut this part, or I'll edit this part out of the final recording, but I'll go ahead with the intro. And so, welcome to the Create Dominion podcast with your host, Diamond D Money 1996. Got two special guests, got a special treat for you guys on this Super Bowl Sunday. So if you guys are football fans, let me know in the poll whether you're taking the Chiefs or the 49ers. But we do got a special episode here for the Childhood Trauma Series on sibling warfare. And we also have a special guest. We have Alex Furlow out of Cypress, Texas, Kingdom Life Ministries, that'll be keying in on some spirituality, Christianity key points throughout the podcast as well. So I definitely am gracious to have you, as well as have Mike on here as well to tell his story on sibling warfare. And so I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Hey, I'm Mike, and I host My Truths podcast. And I am very, very honored and privileged to be here, man. Thank you very much for having me. I am a husband, a father, and a man of God. And it's a daily struggle. It's a daily struggle to be a husband, a father, and a man of God. But I'm so blessed to know that the Father is there to walk me through, days in and days out. Every day we wake up is a struggle, but every day is also a blessing. I should have said that in the very beginning, so my apologies for that. But again, I thank you very much for having me. And I'll pass it over to Alex.
Well, hello. My name is Alex, and I count it an awesome honor to be a part of this. Looking forward to what it goes into. I am likewise, as Mike said, a father, a husband, and I'm a man of God as well. I don't look at every day as a struggle, but I do see them as challenges from time to time, because we never know the strength that we're able to walk in until we recognize what the challenges are. So I'm game for that. And so, hey, let's just get into it.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys coming on to Create Dominion. And so make sure you go follow My Truths podcast if you're viewing the episode as you continue to listen. And so we'll get right into it. Again, if you haven't viewed the previous episodes, the Childhood Trauma Series, I went through a little bit of my story just to give you a little synopsis of that. I am Darion Morris, Diamond D Money 1996 as the host name, but I am a domestic violence survivor. As you guys know that are viewing, again, my biological father did try to take me and my mother's life when I was 14 years of age. And so that was a main key contributor to the birth of the Create Dominion podcast. And so make sure you go view the first two episodes of the Childhood Trauma Series as I go through my story. And so we'll get right into it. This episode is a little bit about sibling warfare. And so if you're a viewer out there, I challenge you. I had, 3 sisters growing up. And so if you're a viewer out here, I want you to key in and listen. Because, if you have a similar story, or maybe someone with a similar story, I hope that, what's spoken here can, reach those of you who feel that maybe you don't have a voice, or feel that, you aren't being heard. And so I just want to let every viewer out there know that, your story matters, your voice matters. Trauma is trauma. Everybody's story is different. There's not one, my story is not greater than anyone else's story. Like I said, we're all trying to, strive and be the best versions of ourselves. And so I'll let Mike kind of kick it off with telling us a little bit about his childhood and upbringing.
Well, I started the whole segment today by saying, and thank you for correcting me, Alex, because I didn't think about it until you mentioned it. It is a challenge, but I've always looked at it as a bit of a struggle, and it has a lot to do with my upbringing. That was, and now that I see it and I think about it, Alex, and that was for me, it was a challenge. I grew up in a household of a single parent. My mother, God rest her soul, she did everything she could to take care of her family. And I am the youngest of five. I have three older sisters, and I have an older brother. Here is the problem. I never had the typical brother on brother relationship. My older brother, he really didn't have too much to do with me. And it started from very young. My sisters, on the other hand, were my everything. I would hang out with them. The youngest girl in the family, which is she's not my younger sister, but she's the youngest girl in the family. She and I are best friends, even till this day. And it started from when I was younger. Yeah, and I know she's gonna say something if she hears this, but I'll say it. She used to get in trouble so much that she was on punishment half the time, so she became my in-house buddy. So, with that being said, we grew a really, really close relationship. My brother, on the other hand, we didn't have that relationship. My brother, on the other hand, and as I get older, as I'm older now, I really think I would like to say it was jealousy. And why, I don't know, because I was much younger than him. I had nothing that was better than his. I get, well, you know what? I guess attention would be the biggest thing. And me being the youngest, and and I'll admit, I was absolutely spoiled. I was absolutely spoiled. But getting into my brother always took things to the extreme. My brother always took things to the extreme. So, me growing up in a single parent household, my mom had to work, and it was left up to my siblings to watch me and help raise me, and so blessings to them. But my brother, on the other hand, if it was, I'll put it out as an example. I'd gotten in trouble one day at school, and he had to go. My mom had to leave work and go pick me up, and she brought me home. And, she was upset. My mom, she fussed with me or whatever. But my brother, on the other hand, he took it to the other extreme. My brother hit me so hard one time, he almost broke my nose. And it was things like that. Did he, and he was just, he was very, very, I would like to, I want to say in plain English, he was kind of to himself, or at least with me anyway. He never really would speak to me. I was never really allowed in his room, and it's a lot that goes behind it, and I'll get further into it as we talk. But it's just a lot that was revealed, and I honestly feel, well, it's two things. One is that my brother, I think my brother was jealous of me. And, the other one is, I think it was just, he had a self-esteem issue. He had a self-esteem issue. So rather than try to work it out or try to, I'm not even going to say seek counseling, because this is back in the early 80s. So, black men didn't really want to go seek counseling, especially if you coming in from a family that's not even, that's just barely above the poverty line, So, with things like that, and I may be rambling a little bit because now I'm thinking about it as we're going through this. Yeah, it was abuse. It really was, because he didn't treat me like I was his brother. He didn't treat me like family. He almost treated me like I was an animal outside. I mean, it's just, it was just rough. It was just rough. So,
And so, with that being said, again, appreciate your story, and sorry for what you went through. So if you're viewing out there, I just know a little bit of my story. I just remember, you know, through my own domestic violence abuse, my mother, like I said, she's, again, I grew up in church, always grew up Pentecostal. My mother was always that light, a ray of light around wherever she went, and I just remember my dad, growing up, he would always, try to put me and my sister against each other. Um, and that would, and it would be simple stuff like he would give me money for doing chores and not her, back when we had allowance, just simple, when I look back now, especially being a father myself of twin boys who are 6 years old, I just remember, simple stuff like, getting me ice cream and not getting her ice cream, or um, Christmas time, he might get her a couple extra toys and not me, or, just the psychological, mental evaluation of things, maybe her grades were better than mine, or, just try to play like little mind games just to see if we kind of go against each other. And my mom would always, step in and put a stop to it, and pull them to the side and let them know, that's not okay. Their
mm,
siblings are supposed to love one another. And I just remember, key factors and just different points in my childhood where, so question on that, I know, like you said, you were raised in a single parent home. And I know, I was the oldest in my home. So I, you know, was tasked when my parents were at work, or especially in the summertime when we were on summer break, I was in charge of looking after my younger sibling, my younger sister, who's 3 years younger than me. Would you say that, um, like I said, I know you had said you in a single parent home, but would you say that maybe your brother kind of psychologically, looked at you as like a resemblance of your father, or maybe kind of that animosity or that kind of envy
you,
of you being the youngest?
you know, um, as far as the first question, no, because I would say no to this, because if we're doing physical comparisons, I look like my mother. My brother, on the hand, he is, from what I'm told, from pictures that I see of my father, because my father passed away when I was 2 years old. So I have no recollection. Um, my brother looks like my father. And it, just, man, it's so much, man. I'm sorry. We might have to do a two-parter on this. Um, it seems like, now that I'm talking to you and now that I'm really thinking about it, because a lot of this stuff I suppressed for years. Like, a lot of stuff I just don't want to remember. And I too am a father. I too am a father of twin girls. Um, I have, in all total, it's it's 8 kids. So, and I fight so hard, even till this day. And my oldest, he's 31 years old. I fight so hard to make sure that there is no separation between them, that they all are, it's kind of a cohesive unit. Although, the older ones, they live outside their home. Um, but as far as my dad, again, man, I don't remember too much about him, but I do know that he was a tough man, that he was a hard man. He was loving, but he was also very hard. And I think some of it, well, I think a lot of it has to do with the way my brother would have had treated me, because my father, from my understanding, he was very hard on my brother. Um, like how you would say, how you were talking about the comparisons between you and your sister, how your dad would do this for you, and your dad would, you would do this for you, but he wouldn't do that for your sister, or vice versa. There were times where he did for your sister and wouldn't do for you. My dad was like that, but in the physical form. Like if he I don't ever remember hearing him disciplining my sisters. But I do remember hearing how he would discipline my brother, and it was rough. And it was rough. So, even to that, I understand and I get, but me as a man, I'm not. I guess it's somewhere where someone has to break the cycle, and I realized that, and I found myself doing that with my youngest son. Like I was a little harder on him, and we can get into that, man. I don't want to hog up all the time. We can get into that a little later.
Awesome, awesome. And so I do want Alex to chime in here because, like I said, I know he's a head pastor at Kingdom Life Ministries down in Cypress, Texas. And so I want Alex to, chime in on, what he's seen throughout his career in regards to seeing God break down those barriers within the church.
Well, I would say this. Basically, you have what I call them internal expectations that would validate position, meaning we throw our weight around sometime to help establish who we are. It's hard for a daddy to show a son how to be a daddy when he didn't have one. And so we play it by ear. It's almost like trying to ride the bike and put that bike together at the same time. My father was in and out. I'm the oldest of my brothers. And so with that being said, there are expectations that rest on the oldest child. And then that oldest child emulates the behavior he receives from that father or from that adult, whomever it is that's responsible for that child. Oftentimes that child emulates that behavior, and we do it unknowingly. That's the thing about it. It's not like he's sitting over in the corner planning on redoing this. It just happens because what you are around, you evolve to. If I hang around a whole bunch of loud people, eventually I'm gonna be loud. Why? Because that's the dominant area of my existence. So if you have an abusive parent, it's hard to not reenact that at some point in time, in some way or in some fashion in your life. And so you may not be abusive to you. If you were abused from an adult as a child, you may not emulate that same abuse to your child, but you may have that same type of temperament in other areas. You may be hard speaking when you speak to your wife. You may, this may come up in the lack of performance on your job. There are other ways that these things formulate. So we just have to let the Lord minister to our heart to where we grow into being better. You don't have to be what you've been through. And I think that that's really how we want to address it. I would tell you, you don't have to be what you've been through. You don't have to carry that label nor carry that weight. You don't, people say, I'm just going to play the cards I'm dealt. No, we're just going to get a whole nother hand. That's how that works. And with that being said, to you, D, and to you, Mike, I would say to you, what you've been through, it not being your fault, but it was allowed to happen so that you all can be the men that you become today. You do what you do today because you experienced something that you don't want no one to ever have to experience later. And so now you all have become some very prominent and men full of character and integrity. And that's how it's supposed to be. Unfortunately, that might not have been what you were taught outside of hard knocks. And so with that being said, it's hard. It's what I'm saying. And then here's the kicker. Every child in the family receives these things differently. You may turn out to be a great kid, but your brother may be a hellion, right? And so I think this has a whole lot to do with what our heart, the love that's displayed in our heart, and then what we make up in our mind to be or to become. And that's just kind of where I kind of hang my hat on that, because you see it all the time. Abuse is abuse. It's very serious. But it comes in so many different forms. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's verbal, mental, emotional, you know what I'm saying? And so we got to be in a position to say, hey, you know what? I don't have to be what I've been through. And I might have experienced it in my younger days, but I'm thankful that I'm here. And it didn't turn me into the monster that I had the encounter when I was younger, if that makes sense.
Awesome. That's perfectly said. And so if you're listening and viewing out there, he said some key things. One of the first things he said when he was speaking about your surroundings and the team of people that you have around you. One quote, they always say that you're the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. There's another quote by Colin Cohere, and he's a sports broadcaster, but I heard this a few years ago. He said, you take the best thing that somebody's done for you, the best way they've treated you, you take the worst thing they've done or the worst way they treated you, you cancel them out, and everything in between is who they are as a person. And so, another thing that Alex really touched on as well is, you don't have to just throw in the towel and deal with it. He said a good quote. He said, instead of playing with the cards you're dealt, reshuffle and get a new hand. Kind of like playing blackjack. And you just say stand and you go to the next hand. And so a lot of things that was very well spoken on. You sometimes we go through things that shape us and mold us into who God's called us to be and who we're supposed to be. But as you're going through the storm, you may not see it until you get out of the storm. And so,
if I may just tag just right there, because here's the thing: everybody in existence, I'll make this key point. I'm a hush. Everybody in existence has been given the opportunity and the responsibility to complete the life that you've been given to live. That's your responsibility. You can't choose to, it's not your choice to like, hey, I don't want to live this life. I want to live that kind of life. The thing is this: the life that you've been given to live, it's not for you. It's literally for whoever it is that you're connected to. So what I had to learn, even coming up, is okay, if I make A's in school, I benefit from having good grades, but who benefits more than me are the people I'm connected to, because it gives them the understanding to know if he can make it, I can make it. Your life has to be lived for others to glean from, and that's how it happens. So it's like Jesus did it. We glean from his life. Now we have eternal opportunity. At the end of the day, I'm not living my life for y'all. I'm not living my life for me. I'm living my life so that you can get the best that you can encounter from the example I've set by me living my best life. My best life also may consist of, though, some very hard places. But the hard places just brings a greater shine to your existence. And if we can wrap our minds around that, we don't criticize and we don't downplay our hardships, because our hardships just bring about a greater shine. You had a shoe before that had a scuff on it. You had to do a little bit more elbow grease to get that shine on there. And sometimes some of us have had to be rubbed a little harder than others. You know what I'm saying? So that the shine can come out. So yeah, unfortunately, we've had some hard stuff. Some people have encountered some very, very unfair things. It happens, you know what I'm saying? But the mercy of God puts us in position to be available so that we can shine brighter. You know what I'm saying? Your shine is just perfect for somebody else that may not be able to see you afar off, but because you shine so bright, they're drawn to you. I think that's what we have to really kind of embrace.
awesome. Well, it's definitely well said. And also to add to that is that, you know, the greater the darkness, the greater the light. Like you said, you can't have darkness without light. So if you're viewing out there and you feel like, what you're going through seems unfair, or if you have that kind of like mentality of, oh, why me? You just have to remember that just means you have a greater light to shine for others.
So, Darren, I have a question for you, if I might.
Yes, go ahead.
So you are a father of twin boys, and so my question to you is, and what I've always wanted to know, what being that what you and your mom have gone through, how do you see yourself interacting with your sons? Are you a little bit more overprotective as to what you say and how you approach them? Just how are you with them? How's your interactions with them?
That's actually a great question. And so just a little backstory into what happened with my mom. Like we were speaking on the light at the end of the tunnel. I watched my mom rebuild herself through God and her and God alone. I reached her. Like I said, we were born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky. Just to give a small backstory to it, we ended up having to uproot. Me, her, and my sister had to move to Indiana. Reason we moved to Indiana, that's where her father, my grandfather, lived at the time. Again, he's since passed on, but I watched my mother, grow into, who she was called to be, and obviously is still growing. And so she was able to remarry. She's been happily married to my stepfather for the past 6 years. I do have a sister as well as a niece and nephew from that remarriage. And so, to answer your question, what he's always told me, just in our short 8 year relationship that we've been able to develop, is that you're not your father. And I remember when I first found out I was having twins, and obviously those being my first children and my only children, he always instilled in me, one, you're not your father, you're Darion, you're your own person, and two, you have a chance right now to shape how you want fatherhood to be for you and your family. And so, with that being said, um, one of the cool things, so Caden, their names are Caden and Jason. Caden was born 4 minutes ahead. I see directly myself as a child in Caden. Even my mother, other family, they even say that he's been here before. His mannerisms, his charismaticness, the way he speaks. Um, like I said, he's only 6 years old. He'll clean his own room. He'll, he'll spray and clean the kitchen, clean his table off. If you ask him if he wants something, if you don't want it, he'll say, "No, I'm fine, Daddy. Thank you." Even both twins, but specifically speaking on Caden, I see the younger version of myself in him. And so, just being able, I would say, for viewers out there, you have to really heal. Like I said, obviously it's still a journey, it's still a daily thing, but watching my mother heal, that inspired me to heal myself. Growing up in my teenage years after this incident, I had a lot of pent up rage and pent up wrath and anger that I had to, speak to God about and allow God to heal. And when I had kids, sometimes you're not perfect. Sometimes, I'm more on the overprotective side, when it comes to certain things. Um, just from being grown as I was growing up. The little backstory to that too, my dad, I used to get whoopings with the belt for every little reason. So my mentality and psychology was based to as, hey, if you're not perfect, then you're worthless or you're less than. And so I've always had that mentality of trying to be a perfectionist and not being able to make mistakes. And so I've had to unlearn that behavior and retrain my mind to show myself grace. And with kids you have to have patience, and I think growing up I didn't have any patience because I was always on eggshells about, oh, if I don't take out the trash I'm gonna get a whooping. If I don't
Mm.
get good grades in school, I'm gonna if he comes home at 5:30, comes through the door, I'm gonna get a whooping. If I don't clean my room, I'm gonna get a whooping. And so growing up into adulthood, I had to unlearn that behavior, as I'm dealing with kids. Kids, like I said, take a lot of patience, especially twin boys. The room's going to be dirty. And so I was a good question, because it allowed me to see, kind of relive my past, if you will. So like the times where I got whoopings for not taking out, obviously they're not taking out the trash at 6, but cleaning, simple things like cleaning their room, or yeah, they're in kindergarten now, but doing good in school, behaving in class, um, going, being able to raise them. I'm seeing the certain situations where, hey, maybe I go in the room and it's not clean, or maybe they're kids, maybe they snuck some fruit snacks and hid them under the bed. I'm able to relive the situations where I did that in the past, where I got a whooping, to where it's I can, sit them down and talk to them, do the things that I wasn't afforded to, that my father wasn't afforded to me. I'm able to, kind of break the cycle of the generational curse, and, you know, be able to teach and talk to my kids. So I do a lot of like talking to the kids, teaching them a lot of things. Um, like I said, I don't. I'm not necessarily saying I'm against whoopings, but there's a certain extent. Maybe it's just a pat on the butt.
Right.
Just so they
Right.
know, then they're aware. So like the over aggressiveness, try not to. And then also, if you do, one thing my father failed at back then was consistently, apologizing when it went too far. I think that was, and even after the situation, when he was able to get out of incarceration, I'm still like, I had like two phone conversations with him. He had no remorse, no apology, no explanation for what transpired. So even to this day, he's still literally the same person. So I just choose not to deal with him. Like I said, love from a distance and forgive from a distance. But seeing that, like I said, seeing my mother, you know, God heal her, I was able to then, it inspired me to heal myself. And even with my kids, like the biggest thing I learned was to show grace. You don't, nobody's no, I'm not perfect. The kids aren't perfect. Only God is perfect. And so, um, really, basically reliving my past through raising my kids and being able to, sometimes I get like flashbacks of like, especially when I have to discipline them. Like, I remember one time, Caden had gotten the bathroom and got the Vaseline and literally I was, using the restroom, came out and he was wiping it all over the tables on the couch. And so it's like little moments like that where, if that would have happened when I was a kid, I would have got a whooping and had welts all over my skin. But you know, living through that flashback and knowing that, able to reverse the cycle and, just, you know, pull them to the side and, let them know, that, not to do that, but also be able to self-reflect and like, hey, just make sure you're not leaving, Vaseline out for kids to get anyway. So having that self-reflection instead of, lashing out like my father used to do to me.
So let me do that real fast because I do have another appointment to get to, and I hate to say that on the air like that, but I want to say this to you, Dr. Darian. If I call you that, I guess I'm speaking doctor over your life, right? Listen, trauma is serious, and what we have to remember is this: even though we went through the different levels of extremities that we went through, you don't want it to handicap your ability to mold your children. Because as a father, your responsibility is to speak into their life, right? To help direct what their destiny looks like. And so, this Vaseline story, I'm just gonna go ahead and be a daddy because I am one. My boys are 25 and 19 now, and so the Vaseline story. I think every dad's had one like that. You know, um, we always remember that we never discipline our children from anger, right? That's the first thing. That means if they're irritating you, you need to fall back for a second and gather yourself, and then you proceed to do whatever you need to do so that they get the point. That's wrong because the Bible says the spirit of rod we spoil the child. So if I don't get on you, then what we do is we reestablish and we help cater to a behavior that can be repeated, right? Because all daddy gonna do is talk to me. He really ain't gonna do nothing. All he do is talk. Now this is in hindsight later on in years. So what you do right now plays a major perspective in how they grow up. So remember that no, we may not be overly aggressive when we break out whatever discipline areas that we may do. If it's a SWAT, if it's a pad, if it's a, I used to get them ink stirrers from the Home Depot, and we had them in different places all over the house. And my boys get out of hand, and I take the little it's similar. It's like a little paddle, right? I pull. I say, hey, you don't need to see him, do you? Right? And they know what that means. And it's not every time, no, but there's some things that may need that. There's some things that may need just a stern talking to. Just remember, allow your heart and the love that's inside of you, let that be what ministers to your children. Because here's the thing: as we raise our children, we as parents are consistently ministering to them. Our lives is the example for them. And so I just want to encourage your heart. Even though you've been through some really crazy things, I want to connect with you offline, man. Listen, I'm enjoying the conversation, And I got a men's prayer line that I do every Friday morning at 5 a.m. And we come together, man, and we get it in. We have talks like this. We pray, and we impart information for success and growth into the hearts of men. So for men who have children, we don't raise bad kids. You feel me? We are men of integrity, and we show that so that our children can grow into that. But I just want to encourage your heart. I believe that you're going down the right path. You're doing what's right, you know. But I want to just kind of make this verbal, even over the airwaves here, that I'm making myself a support to you, so that you can evolve and be the best man that God called you to be. Because you're doing it from a place, and sometimes you may not have all the examples you need, and sometimes you kind of might be out there by yourself. Sometimes, at least it may feel that way. I don't want you to feel like that. You got some backing down here in Houston, Doc. We're here for you. So just on that note, I do have to cut out, and I thank you for this time to be able to hang out with y'all. But I just want to be sure and let you know. Listen, don't let your trauma handicap you. That's another kicker I want to put into play. You've been through some stuff, but don't let what you've been through prevent you from being your best you. Even when it comes down to having to discipline your children, because yeah, flashbacks happen. Wow, that happened to me. I don't want my son to ever have to experience that. So, Lord, show me how to discipline my children so that they don't feel like I felt with the parent that I had. But help them to see the love in my heart for them so that we all can grow together and be that unity, that unified bond that He's placed in your care. So just to put that on the table, man. I just want to be sure that you understand and know, hey, you're not the only one, and you're not in this fight by yourself. Just keep pressing in. Keep pressing in.
I definitely appreciate that, and I'll definitely be in touch.
Mr. Alex, thank you very much, man.
Yeah, I hate. I gotta get out of here, but I'm just like, okay, let me just say this little last piece. Just man, oh my God, I wish I could. This topic is so it's so deep to me, even with the sibling situation, because I have brothers and sisters, and it's like, man, at the end of the day, everybody listen to this podcast. At the end of the day, your main concern and your prayer should be, Lord, make me the best me for the people I've been given responsibility over. If you do that, you won't mess up. And if you do that, they'll respect you as they grow up. And on that note, I gotta go, fellas.
All right, it's been a pleasure.
All right. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one, man.
Thank you.
Talk to you. So, I'm thinking, and Darren, as you were talking, I was really thinking about something. I said, my son, who I talked about earlier, he also has the same. He's the same sign as my brother, and you don't have to be into astrological signs or anything like that, numerology, nothing like that. But for me, I just understand, like, I see the patterns in people. And then you happen to ask them, hey, well, what's your birthday? And they tell you their birthday. And you're like, okay. So you put two and two together. And I'm telling you, my brother and my son are the same mindset, whereas they only speak when they're spoken to. My son is like that now, where he wants to overtalk you. He doesn't really want to hear what you have to say. Like, his answer, his way is the right way. And my brother is the same exact way. Even now that I'm 49 years old, when I do have to speak to him, he is exactly the same way. The difference now is between now and then is that I simply can just hang up the phone and say, hey, I don't, I'm all right. I'll talk to you later, and I hang up. As to when I was younger, I pretty much had to take it. So I say all of that to say, when it came down to me fussing with my son, my rage, I didn't get a chance to sit down and relax and think about it, like Alex was saying. I didn't get a chance to do that because I just instantly went into one frame of mind. And it was like, until one day, honestly speaking, as I had my hands on my son, I was like, I honestly grabbed him and I started shaking, and I was like, I gotta walk away. I went in and I sat in my car and I started crying. I was like, something's got to give. Something's got to change. What is it what am I missing? And I realized missing pieces that I suppressed it for so long that I hadn't gotten a chance to talk about it. So I thank you very, very much, man, again for having me on here, because it gave me a window to air out my differences, air out my actual thought pattern and my thoughts. So
No, I definitely appreciate you having you on. And so, with that being said, I just feel like I'll talk a little bit on sibling warfare in the Black community. I was talking about this yesterday with a young lady, as we were just debating on we were actually talking about dating in the Black community from, both perspectives, but more on the sibling warfare side of things. Um, I feel like, especially Black community, especially in church, I feel like, so for my father, he actually heard this story when I was after this event had happened, but found out like when he was a kid, he would go around telling everyone he was evil, as a young boy. And so, obviously in today's economy, you're going to get therapists, or, you're going to, do different psychological tests and kind of determine what's going on and seek help and seek counsel. But, back then, especially growing up in church, you kind of just dealt with it. And so, do you feel that, as obviously it's 2024, do you feel that, there's more of a awareness and uprising to, dealing with certain traumas and issues that way, like Alex was saying, to, continue to heal and, allow God to heal you and, become, own who you're responsible for and become the best version of yourself?
Oh, you know what? Absolutely. Absolutely. And one thing I will say to this is that we get, like, the millennials of today, they get a bad rap. They really do. A lot of them, they're what they're said. They don't want to ever leave home. They don't stay at a job. They don't. But here's the thing about them, which has made the older generations and the generations before them have wake up and take notice. They are not afraid to express themselves. So with that being said, if something was to transpire, just look at the whole George Floyd thing. A lot of times you saw in news and you saw people out there doing, they're on, they're walking the streets, fighting against the issues of racism and whatever. A lot of them were millennials. A lot of them was a younger generation standing up and speaking out. So what I mean by all of that is that them not being afraid to speak out, which has driven me and people of my generation to say, hey, listen, I have a problem and I want to speak out. Well, at least that's how it hit me anyway. I have kids, I have millennial children. And it's like, they're not afraid to say, hey, this doesn't feel good, I'm not doing this. Hey, why are you raising your voice to me for no reason? Back in the day, when you did that to your parents, you speaking out against your parents, you might get hit. So yeah, this is a whole different time, man, and it's time to stand up and speak out. Men have to. It's okay to say, hey, listen, I have a problem, and I need to seek help. No, going to the days where you drink yourself away, you drink your problems away, or you smoke your problems away. That's never going to be the end of it. Because once that high comes down, you back to square one. So, with that's just my point of inspiration. Like, I look to the younger generation, and I'm so impressed by they're not being afraid to speak up. Unlike, my generation and generation before, was like where you held everything in. So I think it's going forward. I think it's great that you see more more television commercials about mental illness. You see brothers like Charlemagne the God from from Power 105. He's speaking on it. He's heavy into mental awareness, and so yeah, I think now is a lot different than it was back in the day. And I welcome it because it's brought me to this platform here to speak with you and not be afraid to express myself pretty much. And that's what's, as I'm talking to you now, I feel a burden coming off my shoulders. So,
I definitely appreciate you sharing that. And there's different, like, to your point, there's different aspects. I even remember, um not just with my father, but just in general, like, I talk about the church because I grew up Pentecostal. So if you're viewing and you didn't grow up in church, it still resonates with society. And that, like you said, back in the day, I remember being a kid, like, you didn't even eat at the same table. When there was a family event like Thanksgiving, they had the little kids table in the other room, and then the adults sat at the big table.
right,
You couldn't, like you said, you'd get slapped. You couldn't question your parents, you couldn't question the church, you couldn't question anything. If you had a opinion that wasn't, everybody kind of, it was like a kind of like the shake your head and nod syndrome.
right,
Hey, this is what we're doing, and it's like whatever. But now I think like you said, there's that uprising, just with just different spiritualities. And like I said, I'm my own person, so I have my own views. But
hmm,
I think that, like you said, the ability to like discuss with the older generation, with millennials in regards to, abuse, domestic violence. And like I said, if you're viewing, check out the rest of the episodes of the childhood trauma series, and there's more series and more episodes to come. But what you'll begin to outline is that, you know, like you said, the millennials and the newer age, it allows both parties, old generations and new generations, to visit trauma and visit things, while individuals, like I said, every day is not promised. So it's good to visit these things while individuals are still living. That way, when as time goes on and people do pass on, you kind of already, I think, just to speak on the passing of, elders or family members, I think, just in my personal opinion, but I think if you're able to talk about that while they're living and bridge the gaps and discuss that trauma, like, hey, you know, back then, this is what you did to me, whether it be sexual abuse, whether it be domestic violence, verbal, physical, emotional, mental, psychological, financial, whatever it may be. Hey, this is what you did to me. Let's talk it out. Let's talk through it. And, I think that puts a lot of mental stress on families, and individuals, because there's a lot of people out there that have had family members, grandparents, parents that have passed on, and they weren't able to, have those discussions before it was too late, or maybe siblings, or maybe, girlfriends, boyfriends, spouses, childhood friends, what have you. They weren't able to have those deep, hard conversations and kind of, heal. And then, one party has passed on, and it's like, now you're kind of stuck in that, rut of, what could have happened, or what would happen if we had spoken about
sure,
it. And
sure.
so,
I think I think a lot of it has to do with, as far as, well, for me, speaking on me, it has to stop somewhere, because my father did it to my brother, and my brother did it to me. It has to stop somewhere, and I am going to be the one to stop it. I'm going to be the one to stop it, and with help from with therapy help, and you know, uh, being back in church on a more consistent, regular basis, and understanding and knowing God has helped tremendously. There's times where I feel like he and my son, my youngest son, we butt heads, and it's not the same. It's really not, because I'll just like, all right, man, we can talk about this later. And I will go, and I will go and sit down and see. And that's the thing. He never would provoke anything. Like if he said something and I responded, because he never responded to me responding, it would piss me off. And it there was just a lot of trauma, man. And I realized it had to end. It all has to stop somewhere, and it's going to stop with me, because I can't have him having kids of his own and the cycle starts all over again. Can't have that, won't have that. So, you know.
Well, you're awesome. And so, like I said, if you're viewing out there, I always challenge viewers to think about your own situation. Maybe you don't have a domestic violence situation. Maybe you don't have any sibling warfare or some sibling trauma, but maybe you have friends out there. Just a little quick story on that. Maybe you had friends in school. Maybe you were bullied in school, and maybe by the way you dress, by the way you look, by the way you're shaped, by the way you act, maybe you had trauma from school friends or neighbors, or it doesn't always have to be siblings, you know, or maybe it was a cousin or different family member. I want, as viewers, I want you to kind of look at your own life and look in the mirror and kind of see, you know like I said, we're all striving to be the best version of ourselves. Again, only God and Jesus are perfect. Those are only perfect beings. There's no such thing as being perfect in human form. And everybody's just trying to, for the most part, everybody's just trying to be better. And with that being said, I want all the viewers to look at, like Mike was saying, it has to stop somewhere. I used to have a marketing business, and a guy's name was Darren. He used to say, the Bible says, leave an inheritance for your children's children. And then he would pause and he would say, some people leave bills and strife for their children's children. And so even if you don't plan on having kids yourself, you still have a family lineage to attain, whether it be siblings or adoption or what have you. And so with that being said, you want to, if you're viewing, you want to, look in the mirror and say, is my family legacy, you don't have to do what they did in the past. You can change the, if you you can look at anybody. You can look at LeBron James, you can look at Kobe Bryant, you can look at different Maya Angelou, you can look at Whoopi Goldberg, you can look at any Simon Sinek, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, whoever. These are individuals, one, we don't know. I always tell people this. One, these celebrities and these figures, you don't know what they had to go through, what they're going through, and what they did to get to where they're at. Two, you don't always know where they're come from. So a lot of people, they might have, for example, LeBron James, his father wasn't in his life, but, he decided to take that upon himself and the responsibility to change his family legacy. Now he has two sons that could be NBA players. He has a beautiful wife that he's been married to since they got out of high school. And so when his sons have sons, they can look back at their LeBron, being the one to break that cycle or break that generational curse of, not having, absent fatherteism and, just different things. Like I said, he grew up in Akron, Ohio, and, there's various other examples of that throughout history and throughout time. And so not even being necessarily a celebrity, but, as a viewer, you have to listen and look and say, even if it's not, necessarily financial gain or riches or legacy, what can I do to separate myself from, the family trauma and the family hardships? And what can I do to set up the people after me for optimal success? And so, in closing, I want to, Mike, if you could give the viewers any tips on overcoming, what you have done to upstart the journey of overcoming your trauma, or any tips on, how you go about disciplining your children. Before he continues and answers that, I do want to say that, it is a journey. You're not gonna, You're not going to wake up and snap your fingers one day and say, okay, all my trauma's healed. Everything's peaches and cream and unicorns. It is a journey, and it's going to take a long, road ahead, and to continue to strive to be the best version of yourself.
That's perfect. That's wow. You've said it all. Again, thank you very much for having me, man. So, and I'll leave you guys with this. It's a journey, and like you said, it's a never-ending journey, because there are times where I still think about it, and I still have a different response when my son says something to me. Not so much my daughters, but when my son says something to me and I don't like what he says, I automatically go to respond in a hostile way. But then I have to remember, no, brother, this is not. You have to understand. And my wife, thank God for my wife, because she would tell me, she's like, listen, are you listening to him when he speaks? So I would really have to sit back and listen to him. But as far as what you are asking, for me, it's how you've heard the saying, it takes a village. It really does. I thank God for my family. I thank God for my sisters. I think because once they found out what was going on, it became something totally different. So I thank God for healing for my sisters. But most of all, I thank God for everything that he has instilled in my family. He's instilled in me to manifest me to the man that I am today. I'm not perfect. I'm not by a long shot. But I see things a lot differently, and as I get older, the wiser I get. So I'm just grateful, eternally grateful for his blessings and his manifestation in my life and in my family's life. So I'll leave you guys with that. But again, man, thank you very much for having me. This was fun.
All right, thank you. And then one quick thing, tell the viewers how they can reach and listen to your podcast.
I am on I'm on YouTube and I'm on Facebook, and like I said, it is My Truths. So it's My Truths podcast. My email address is mytruths.podcast@gmail.com. But for the most part, you can find me on YouTube, and you can find me on Facebook under My Truths podcast. So.
All right, thank you. And then again, also Alex Furlow, he was the special guest pastor from Kingdom Lights Ministries in Cypress, Texas. Feel free, if you are in the Texas, Houston area, to check them out. He does have a prayer men's group at 5 a.m. every Friday morning, so go ahead and check that out as well. But it has been a pleasure with you, Mike. And like I said, Alex had to get off earlier, but it was a pleasure with him as well. And again, this has been episode 5 of the Decree of Dominion Childhood Trauma series on sibling warfare. Hope you guys have a great Super Bowl Sunday, and go 49ers. Thank you.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Everybody take care. Thank you.